Don Rickles had a gift that very few entertainers ever possess. He could make absolutely anyone laugh. Presidents, movie stars, and even Frank Sinatra couldn't resist his razor-sharp humor. But among all the famous faces who shared the stage with him, one partnership stood above the rest. His unforgettable chemistry with Johnny Carson night after night. The two lit up The Tonight Show, captivating millions of viewers with their banter. To the world, their connection looked like a true friendship built on laughter and trust. But when Carson walked away from late-night television in 1992, everything changed. What Don believed he had been promised never materialized, and the bitterness that followed would linger with him for years. Before his death, Rickles finally revealed a side of Carson that few could have imagined. To understand the depth of their story, it helps to look back at Don Rickles' extraordinary journey to fame. Comedy has always relied on timing, sharp delivery, and the ability to make people laugh when they least expect it. During the golden age of television, two men stood at the very top of that comedic world, Johnny Carson and Don Rickles. Both in their own ways changed the landscape of comedy forever. On television, they seemed inseparable. Two best friends constantly teasing each other, sharing inside jokes, and making America laugh together. But behind that effortless on-screen bond was a far more complicated reality, one that Rickles would only truly speak about later in life. Don Rickles, the man who could hurl biting insults at Hollywood royalty and world leaders alike and still make them laugh harder than anyone else, was born on May 8, 1926, in Queens, New York, to Jewish immigrant parents. He grew up in Jackson Heights in a home where Yiddish culture and language were part of daily life. Don often said that his Jewish upbringing shaped not only his quick wit, but also the sharp comedic edge that would eventually define his career. Like many young men of his generation, Rickles' life was abruptly interrupted by World War II. At just 18 years old, in 1944, he enlisted in the United States Navy and served aboard the USS Cyrene, a motor torpedo boat tender. While he didn't see direct combat, the Navy instilled in him a sense of discipline and camaraderie that would stay with him long after he returned home. It also gave him time to reflect on what he truly wanted to do with his life. When the war ended, Don knew exactly what path he wanted to pursue: acting. He enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, one of the country's most respected acting schools, determined to make it as a dramatic performer. But reality hit hard. Acting work was scarce, and he faced rejection after rejection. His frustration grew. By the early 1950s, Rickles decided to try something different: stand-up comedy. Not because he dreamed of being a comedian, but because it kept him on stage, connected to an audience, and performing. At first, he stuck to traditional jokes, but they fell flat. It wasn't until one night, when hecklers interrupted his act, that he stumbled upon his true comedic voice. In a flash of instinct, Rickles snapped back with quick, biting insults. To his surprise, the crowd erupted with laughter. They weren't laughing at his rehearsed jokes. They were laughing at his raw, fearless comebacks. That night, Don Rickles found his calling. He leaned fully into this insult-based style, perfecting it until it became his trademark. His act wasn't about long setups or punchlines. It was about going after whoever was in the room. And yet, there was a special magic to it. He could deliver the harshest lines without truly offending his target. He made people feel like they were part of the joke. This unique balance became the foundation of his entire career. One night in Miami Beach, this style changed his life forever. In the audience sat Frank Sinatra, the most influential entertainer in the country. Rickles spotted him and without hesitation quipped, "Make yourself at home, Frank. Hit somebody." The room exploded in laughter. Everyone knew Sinatra's tough guy reputation, but here was a young comedian daring to poke fun at him. Sinatra loved it. Overnight, he became Rickles' biggest supporter, introducing him to the right people in show business. That single moment opened the doors to Las Vegas, where Don became a headliner. Packed crowds filled his shows, eager not just to laugh, but to be roasted by the Merchant of Venom, a nickname that perfectly captured his style. Ironically, he was also called Mr. Warmth, a nod to the warmth behind the venom. From Vegas, Rickles' career exploded onto television. He became a regular on talk shows and especially shined during the Dean Martin celebrity roasts, where he would roast actors, politicians, and athletes with equal ferocity, leaving everyone in stitches. He starred in sitcoms like C.P.O. Sharkey in the late 1970s and The Don Rickles Show before that. He even proved his dramatic chops in films like Run Silent, Run Deep, acting alongside Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster. In 2007, long after his early days, He won an Emmy Award for the documentary Mr. Warmth, The Don Rickles Project, a tribute to his remarkable career. By then, he had influenced generations of comedians and carved out a place as one of the most original voices in American entertainment. But behind all the laughter, talk show appearances, and Hollywood friendships, there was another side to Don Rickles, one marked by personal joy and deep pain. Don Rickles built his public image on quick wit and fearless humor. But away from the spotlight, his life held both joy and heartbreak. On stage, audiences saw the confident performer who could take down anyone with a single line. Off stage, he was a man with deep personal attachments and private pain that few ever saw. In 1965, Don's life took a meaningful turn when he married Barbara Clark. He often joked that she was the secret to his survival in the tough world of show business. Barbara wasn't just his partner, she was his anchor. Together, they had 2 children, Mindy and Larry. According to Mindy, her father was deeply loving but emotionally guarded. He had no problem showering the world with jokes, but when it came to opening up about his deepest feelings, he struggled. She explained that although he wasn't overly expressive at home, he was a devoted husband and father. He never turned his sharp tongue on his family. To them, he was simply Dad, not Mr. Warmth or the Merchant of Venom. Larry Rickles, his son, chose a different path in entertainment. Instead of performing, Larry became a writer and producer. In 2007, he won an Emmy Award as part of the team behind Mr. Warmth, the Don Rickles Project. Don often said that his children's accomplishments meant more to him than his own. Then tragedy struck. In 2011, Larry died unexpectedly at just 41 years old due to pneumonia. For a man who had built his entire career around making people laugh, losing a child brought a level of pain that went far beyond words. Though Don didn't discuss it publicly in detail, friends noticed a shift in him. His humor remained, but it carried a deeper, heavier undertone. The loss of Larry stayed with him for the rest of his life. And Larry's death wasn't the only burden Rickles carried. Over the years, whispers surfaced about complicated feelings he allegedly had toward Frank Sinatra, the same man who helped launch his career. Some reports suggested that Don privately expressed resentment toward Sinatra and even believed troubling allegations about Sinatra's involvement in Marilyn Monroe's tragic story. He never confirmed these claims publicly, but the rumors lingered in Hollywood circles, adding complexity to his legacy. To the public, Don Rickles remained the man who could roast anyone and make them love him for it. But inside, he carried grief, regrets, and opinions that didn't always match the warm, funny persona the world adored. Despite all this, Rickles never allowed the audience to see him falter. Each time he stepped on stage, he brought the same sharp energy that had defined his career. But soon, another figure would enter his story in a way that would shape the next major chapter of his life. Johnny Carson, the undisputed king of late-night television. Their partnership would become legendary. On-screen, their chemistry was electric, but off-screen, their relationship had layers that few people ever understood. When Don Rickles walked onto the stage of The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson for the first time in 1965, he had no idea that this platform would define much of his career. What began as a single guest appearance evolved into a long-running, unpredictable, and unforgettable relationship. Over the years, Rickles became one of Carson's most frequent and beloved guests, appearing more than 100 times. Their chemistry worked because they were opposites. Johnny Carson was smooth, calm, and impeccably timed. He played the straight man better than anyone on television. Rickles was loud, chaotic, and completely unfiltered, willing to say what others only thought. Together, they created television magic. Audiences didn't just tune in for Carson's monologue. They waited to see what would happen when Rickles walked onto that stage. One of the most legendary moments came in 1976. Carson was hosting as usual when he reached for his cigarette box on his desk, only to find it broken. The culprit, Don Rickles, who had guest hosted the night before. Without hesitation, Carson did something extraordinary. He left his own set in the middle of the show, walked down the hall to the studio where Rickles was filming CPO Sharkey, and burst in on the live taping. The audience roared with laughter as Carson confronted Rickles in front of everyone. Rickles' feigned innocence then turned the moment into pure comedy gold.